Hi everyone, this is John Corley at Plant Based Life here with another one of our videos, and what I'm going to talk about today is fraud complex. Now what exactly is that? Well, last month I was at an NLP seminar, and it was a very informative seminar actually. Seminar workshop went on for a few hours. Basically NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's a way of setting new neural pathways in your brain to take on new ways of approaching things and to get rid of old feelings or views you may have towards certain aspects of your life. I mean, it does a lot more than that, it's a lot more in detail than that, and it's a lot more in depth. It was just a very short seminar workshop that I went to, but it was very, very interesting, and I found it very insightful, and I learnt a lot from it. Now, one of the things that was talked about in that was fraud complex, and this is basically where people who are teachers or lecturers or self-help gurus or Pilates instructors, movement specialists like myself, personal trainers, whatever, where we're giving out all this information, well, people are out there thinking, well, are they really doing all the things that they're talking about, and the person themselves, like myself or a person who's doing all this self-help or helping people, can feel sometimes like, they can get a bit of a complex, which is fraud complex, which means you're not always feeling like you are doing all the things that you're telling other people to do. Right? So I can imagine there's people out there who watch these videos and watch other YouTube videos and go to seminars, workshops, whatever, and listen to people talk and think, well, this guy is telling me to eat these foods, do this exercise, have a morning routine that involves all these things, basically to be more mindful, to meditate, to reduce stress in my life, and all these tips. And you're probably sitting there thinking, well, is he doing all this? How do we know? Well, look, one thing I'll say about myself is I do all of these things, and they are a very, very important part of my life. I instill it with my clients and with other people as well. Anyone I meet, really, I try and get everybody to take on these practices if I can. Right? But one thing I will say, I do suffer from fraud complex, the same as every other teacher or so-called, expert. I don't believe in that term expert, I've done another video on that, but people who may have more knowledge on a subject than others, who try and help other people become, better versions of themselves. Well, I might say to people, look, you need to get 8 hours sleep a night, but I'll go for a week, some weeks, where I'm working a lot of hours, got a lot of external pressures, and I might only get 4 or 5 hours sleep some nights. So by the time I come to do one of these videos, or I'm training someone or doing something else, I haven't lived by the principles that I'm trying to, give everyone. But look, the simple fact is, if you can implement 90% of these good practices, most of the time, then you've done very well. I mean, 90% is quite high. Some people, their life might get hectic, it might drop down to 40, 50%. You might go for a little while where you don't do that many of these practices at all. But the first thing you've got to do is not give yourself a hard time. You've got to realise, well, look, you've had a lot of external pressures going on, and get back into it and get back onto it and do it again. And it's the same for us people who are, giving you this advice and teaching. We suffer from fraud complex. There'll be times where I have a lot of stresses in my life, financial pressures, family pressures, getting enough sleep. Do I get rest and recovery between my workouts? Are my workouts intense enough? And, sometimes I might not get a workout in, but I'll always make up for it the next day. I always believe every workout is important. So generally I don't go a day without a workout, even if it's a very short one. The other thing to remember is, one thing I've said to many people in the past, your workouts don't have to be 40 minutes, an hour, they can be 10 minutes. Short little bursts. They can even be 4 minutes if you do interval training, like Tabata type training, and you can just bring in stretching and moving in your day. Don't overthink things and make them complicated. But yes, we do. People who teach others, we do suffer from what's called fraud complex. It's a very common thing because nobody alive lives a perfect life. Nobody, right? And for anybody to come on and teach someone anything, if they were to try and say, yeah, everything I do is perfect and I don't, make mistakes myself, and I haven't gone through periods of life where I've struggled with these healthy practices or instilling them, whatever, they're not telling the truth, because everybody does, right? Like, we all have challenges in life. We all have family commitments, work commitments, financial pressures. You know, everybody does. There's no one's immune. You know, some people might be born in better circumstances than others, but they're still going to face challenges. You know, and unfortunately, some people are living in circumstances that we couldn't even comprehend, and they're going to face the kind of challenges that we couldn't comprehend. And you know, I hope that we can all get together and help people that are in a less fortunate place than ourselves, that might be in these troubling times, to be a better person and be, you know, and learn and move forward. Because by helping others, that's another way that you will help yourself. You know, very important way to do that. You know, so it's very important to help others whenever you get the opportunity. But yes, look, every person out there teaching you to be a better version of yourself, or teaching you better life skills or anything else, will suffer from fraud complex at some time in their career or their lifetime. And if they don't admit to it, well then, they're not a very good teacher. Because another thing that came through in the NLP seminar, which I mentioned in another video recently, a humble student makes a very good teacher. So to be a good teacher, to be able to teach others, you've got to be a humble student. You've got to be more of a listener than a talker. I talk a lot on these videos. I'm trying to learn more about listening to people, especially my clients and everyone else, when they're talking about things that are going on in their life. Because I have a habit of talking. I always have. It's one of my you know, characteristics. I like to talk a lot, but I've learned through life, you only learn when you listen and when you do things. You don't learn while you're talking. So very important to be an observer sometimes as well. But remember, if you want a good teacher, make sure they'll admit to you that they do suffer from fraud complex from time to time. Remember, peace, movement and plants.